So I may be a little bit of a downer on Bungie at times for some of the decisions made in Destiny 2. But I will say this, that they have stepped up and listened to the community in terms of PvP, at least in terms of some of the stuff they were saying today in the Bungie Weekly Update. One being that they're going to, for the quick play playlist, they're going to go more for a connection-based matchmaking system. And then in the competitive, they're going to go with a skill-based matchmaking, which is by far one of the most needed changes to PvP. I guess they're also extending the point count for control in order to allow players more time to be able to get their abilities and use them. And they're also increasing the frequency of said abilities. And it sounds like even grenades are going to pack a little bit more of a punch. So it sounds like PvP is going to balance back out. Now, I've seen a lot of things about the trailer that launched recently for the competitive multiplayer, and there was something I and many others noticed, and that is the damage on a lot of weapons seems to be really, really high, and the time to kill seems to be really short. So this leads a lot of people to one of two conclusions. Either they shorten the time to kill and make it more like Destiny 1 in terms of PvP play, or option number two, that this is a misrepresentation of what PvP is going to be like in Destiny 2 because it's so much different from what we played in the beta. Now, I've got my own opinion on it, and I guess this will remain to be seen what happens by the final release, and I guess we'll get a little bit of a clue as to what PvP is going to be like in Destiny 2 in the final version based on some of the stuff we see in the PC beta coming up in just a couple weeks. But I'm really on the fence for what I think they're doing with this trailer. I think that there's a possibility that the gameplay has been changed for PvP to match more closely to Destiny 1 and really hit that Twitch community a little bit more, and they might have shortened the time to kill. But I'm going to go the route that I think this was more for a trailer purpose because they want to make it look appealing. And in such a short period of time, if they show really long time to kills and they're trying to make an emphasis on a trailer, it's going to be hard for them to accurately display that in a way that looks cinematic, that looks action-packed. Now, is this a false representation of PvP if they do it this way? In a way, yes, it is kind of false marketing what the PvP end is going to be like. But I think when people see trailers for games, especially FPS games, they expect a little bit of dramatization in the way that they present the gameplay, because even the PvE stuff sometimes looks a little bit more intense and looks a little bit more badass than that encounter actually really is. So this isn't something I think that is a major, scrutinize Bungie for doing this. But at the same time, it does need to be recognized that if they're not changing the time to kill, then this is a false representation of what PvP is actually going to be like, and it's selling something that isn't accurate to what they're actually selling. So I have a couple of thoughts on that end as well. If they shorten the time to kill, I think that would be a mistake. I think that was probably one of the problems with Destiny 1, and the whole point of them even lengthening the time to kill and announcing that it was going to have a longer time to kill is because that was how it was intended to be. So I think that might be misrepresented in what we've seen from Bungie so far and what we've seen in the beta to what that trailer looked like. And if they make a shift that dramatically, I think they're basing too much on the community opinion, because I think that without getting the full release of Destiny 2, I think it's hard to really judge the pace of PvP when all we got was such a very, very, very small snippet of what's actually there in the beta. So if they're listening to community feedback that heavily, that they're going to shorten the time to kill and things like that, I think that might be giving community feedback a little bit more credit than it deserved, and maybe listening a little too closely to what some of the fringe has to say on that subject. On the other hand, if this really isn't a representation of what it's going to be like and nothing's changing in terms of pacing for PvP, then I think we're gonna have a little bit of a problem with the fact that a lot of people are gonna be expecting more like Destiny 1 gameplay, and they're gonna be disappointed when they go in and see the pacing's different. So, in a way, I think that that's probably a bad move on Bungie's part to market it like that, but I understand why they're doing it. Now, I'm all in favor of the longer time to kill. I think it was very engaging, it was very fun, it was more tactical. But I'm not going to say that if they changed it to the way it appeared in the trailer, that it's going to be a deal breaker, because I've been playing Destiny 1 for, the better part of 3 years now. So, the pacing is really not that bad in Destiny 1. But I think if they really want Destiny 2 to stand out, be a part, and live up to what they said they originally were going to do, then they need to hold off on tuning the time to kill so much as maybe tweaking the abilities. If melees and grenades do more damage, which will innately kind of shorten the time to kill if you're using melees, it really does kind of balance that part of it out. And with there being a longer spread between getting grenades, having them do more damage seems like it would make sense. You might get a really quick kill with a grenade and a quick melee, or a grenade and a one tap, and get a really, really quick solid kill. But you're going to have to wait a couple minutes before you can do that again with a cooldown rate, and I think that that's perfectly acceptable. I think that a shorter time to kill in certain instances is okay. Like, in the trailer, there's a sniper rifle that does one shot to the body and kills. Now, I think that that is perfectly okay with the way they shifted the power weapon, if that's a certain type of archetype of sniper rifle. I don't think maybe every sniper rifle should one shot to the body. But again, these numbers are hard to tell whether this is an accurate representation, whether this is a much older build, or maybe this was simply done for trailer purposes. So take that with a grain of salt. Now, there was a lot of things showcased in the trailer. I'm not going to go through it all. But if you guys want to see it, there will be a link down in the description below. There's a lot of new armor and weapons that were shown off in this trailer. And it really did a good job of making the competitive multiplayer looking really exciting, which I think was maybe a little bit different from the impression most people got from the beta, where it was kind of slower and boring. So maybe there will be a mashup of these. Maybe some of those game modes we've seen have like modifiers on them where weapons do more damage, things like that, so it is a little bit quicker paced, because I wouldn't mind specific game modes being a lot slower, like Control and the way that was, and then maybe some game modes actually having a quicker time to kill and making you be a little bit more on your toes, and just kind of how it is. Maybe for Supremacy, have that shorter time to kill and really emphasize the mobility aspect of it and the running and gunning part of it. And then for Control, make that time to kill a little bit slower and really emphasize on zone control and tactical gameplay. I think that these things could balance each other out. Now, in terms of the matchmaking, what this essentially means is that going into quick play, you're going to have quicker times to get into a match. You're going to have better connection in your matches, but you're not always going to necessarily be paired up by skill so much. And what that means is you may come into a game mode where you run across a bunch of N-Cooch level players, and you really just get the tar stomped out of you. But then you go back in and you're on the reverse of that, and you get a whole bunch of players that are a little bit weaker, things like that. And this is something that, while that is kind of frustrating to deal with, it is preferable to the sweat fest that is skill-based matchmaking. And I think that by moving skill-based primarily to competitive, which is where I think you want it. I know Mesa Sean said that he thinks that those should be switched, but if you're going into competitive, you want the skill gap as tight as possible to really make it a really intense type of scenario. So I think that these connection, or the connection base for quick play and the skill base for competitive, is definitely going to be the proper route to going through for this. And I think that Bungie they said they still take match or skill base into consideration even in quick play. But the whole thing is quick play is meant to be a more laid back experience, less sweaty, less stat noting. I mean, there's a lot of people that say, well, I don't want to end up coming up against a bunch of players and have high level players and have my stats tank in quick play because there's no skill based matchmaking. But stats in quick play really aren't that big of a deal because it's quick play. It's not competitive. It's not a reflection of what your actual competitive level is. I think the stats in competitive mode are far more important than those in quick play. But this is just my thoughts and my ramblings. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you all later, and I will see you in the next one.